Hi! Welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a story time episode about some of my most memorable dates. So I've dated for, a long time, right? I got married when I was 26. 10 years of dating. Been on a lot of dates. Lots of stories. Most of them were like pretty generic. Go out for food, go out to the movies, go on a double date with friends, bowling. I've been horse riding, skiing. My first date ever, it was like the day before I turned 16, and we went to go see New Moon in theaters, and it was like the classic old midnight showing where you got in line so you could get good seats. So like the 2 or so hours before the movie even started, we were watching the first Twilight movie on the laptop, and I remember that one pretty well. His brother drove us to the theater, and there's like this one street in Provo called Palisade Drive, and it has like 7 billion speed bumps, and this guy was going like 45 over all of these speed bumps, and it was like, okay, I'm gonna die. Anyway, so that was my first date. My first kiss date was pretty memorable. Hopefully people remember that. It was actually pretty good. I was 19 when I got my first kiss, and we went on a 4-wheel ride, and then we saw a cougar. So that was fun and scary. The first date with my husband, we got food and ate it in a park, and there was this homeless guy who was just screaming at this dog in a yard nearby who was barking, and that was very interesting. One of the most memorable, not bad dates that I've been on, me and this guy went to a hockey game, some sporting event, and then we went out and bought stuff and made peanut butter and jello sandwiches. And there's a story behind that, but that'll come in a different video. Alright, but here's the good part. This is the worst date stories. So gentlemen and ladies, I guess, listen and learn. One of the worst dates that I ever went on was with this guy who was in my church. I don't think I even knew his name when he asked me out, but we went out. We went to dinner. There was like no chemistry there. I wasn't feeling it. But at this time, I was like a youngster who still didn't know how to say no to anybody. I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. I'm nice. I'm not gonna say like, okay, I'm done, take me home now, which I wish I'd have done, but that's fine. After dinner, drives me up into the mountains, like to this parking lot, and it's a great view, but there's nobody else there. So like, number one, that's kind of sketchy. First date with this guy that I hardly know, in the middle of nowhere, it's dark, and then he wants to slow dance, and I'm just like so uncomfortable, and like, again, I don't know how to say no to guys. I'm like a very reserved person. He like puts his finger in my hair and is doing all of this like really like romantic. And then he tries to kiss me, and like finally at that point something was just like, I'm like, no. To this day, when I think about that date, it's like freaking traumatized me. So guys, even if she's not saying no, it doesn't mean she's saying yes, okay? Read the room and ask, do you really want to do this? Is this okay? Are you feeling comfortable? And even then, read the room. Girls, also learn to say no. It's okay. Guys, learn to accept it when girls say no. Okay? Okay. Protect yourselves and each other. Be respectful. Moving on. Another terrible date that I had, he took me to a haunted house, which, first off, when that guy takes you to a haunted house, he's expecting you to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared. Help me. Thankfully, my friend Chelsea had taken me to lots of haunted houses. And at this point, I was pretty much like, I love haunted houses, but they don't scare me. Like, I still jump when, they don't scare me. So I'm sure he was pretty disappointed that I was just like, cool. And then like halfway through, the guy with the chainsaw jumps out. He screams at the top of his lungs and just books it into the night. He just takes off and leaves me, and for the whole rest of the haunted house, I'm by myself, just like, where did this guy go? And then I get to the end, and he's not there. So I'm like texting Chelsea, and I'm like getting very close to being, I think she offered, she was like, do you need me to come pick you up? And I'm like, maybe, actually. And the 5-10 minutes I've just been like hanging out there, he finally shows up, and I'm like, okay, good, take me home. Guys, if you're not prepared to go into a haunted house, don't take a date in there, okay? The worst date. The worst date that I've ever been on. Oh my gosh. It's a good story though, so thank you for that. He is like, I'm gonna surprise you with it. So bring a jacket, and that's all he said, bring a jacket, and it was like fall, so I was like, oh, we'll do something outside. And I'm a girl who likes getting dressed up sometimes, especially for dates, so I was like wearing like this cute outfit, not like incredibly practical, because it's a first date. We go out. First off, he's called a cab. He was like, yeah, I don't have a car, and I was like, oh, well, I have a car, I could have driven. And he's like, oh. Alright, well, I already ordered this cab, so let's go. We go to an ice skating rink. Yes, I had a jacket. Good. Thank you for telling me to bring that. But I was wearing ankle socks. Thin ankle socks with my shoes, which is like the biggest no-no for ice skating. So that was like, okay. Anyway, we put on our shoes, get on the ice. 10 to 30 minutes in, I've already got blisters that are like killing me. I can't even skate properly anymore. I'm like hobbling on the ice, trying to keep up with this guy, and I'm just like in pain and miserable. He asks me at one point, he's like, so like, how are you doing? Are you having a good time? And I was like, yeah, but I've got like really bad blisters. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, that sucks. Continue to ice skate for another hour. Once again, I'm not good at saying no, still at this point, you know, so I'm just like grinning and bearing it, hobbling along on the ice, in a lot of pain. And finally, okay, let's be done. So I take off my shoes and I'm like, okay, I get to go home now. So excited. We're like making conversation, and he asks me like a bunch of questions that I just think are like getting to know you questions. And he's like, so do you like movies or TV shows better? Do you prefer like hamburgers or pizza? Taxi shows up again. We were driving, and he's like, okay, will you drop us off at like this Little Caesars right here? And I'm like, okay, I guess we're getting pizza. So we get pizza, and we walk back to our apartments, which aren't far away. And we go to his apartment, and I'm like, okay, I guess this date isn't over yet. Whatever, we got pizza, I'll eat the pizza. And he's like, let's watch an episode of something while we eat the pizza. Okay, that's fine. He asked me if I've seen American Horror Story before. No, I haven't. I've never even heard of it. He's like, do you like scary stuff? I'm like, yeah, I guess. I'm kind of into scary movies. It's like, okay, let's watch an episode of this. Never! Do not watch an episode of American Horror Story on a first date ever, no matter what. Just don't. That's like the worst, one of the worst shows that you could watch with a girl on the first date. Like, don't even know each other very well. Especially if she has no idea what it is. So the show comes on, and it's full of like sex and like really awkward, weird stuff like that. And I am literally just staring at the floor for the whole episode. And yes, I should have just like walked out. I tell my sisters this later, and they're like, why didn't you just walk out? And I'm like, oh, I forgot that that was an option, because I'm a very polite girl who doesn't know how to say no to things. I regret not walking out of that because I was so uncomfortable. My feet were killing me. Finally, at the end, he's like, cool, do you want to watch another one? I was like, no, I think I'm good. Like, I got stuff to do. And so I walked back to my apartment. Worst date I've ever been on, then or now. Again, learn from these mistakes and things. Those are some of my very interesting date stories, just for fun. Woo. Thanks for coming with me on this journey.